You know that moment when you walk into a room, and before you've even said a word, something about you has already been decided. It's subtle. No one announces it. There's no clear signal. But you can feel it in the way someone looks at you for just a second too long. Or not long enough. In the way conversations either open up around you or stay slightly closed. As if something invisible has already been written, and everyone else is quietly reading from it. Most people don't talk about this part out loud. If anything, they'll say you're overthinking it. That first impressions don't really matter that much, or that people are more complex than that. And on the surface, that sounds reassuring, but it also leaves something out. Because if you've ever had that feeling that within seconds people seem to place you somewhere without knowing you, then you're not imagining it. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means you're noticing a real psychological process that most people move through unconsciously. What's actually happening in those first moments isn't just about appearance or confidence or saying the right thing. It's something deeper, faster, and far more automatic than that. The psychology of first impressions is less about what people consciously notice, and more about what their brain is trying to predict. There's research showing that the human brain starts forming impressions within milliseconds. Not minutes, milliseconds. Before logic has time to catch up, the brain is already scanning for patterns. Is this person safe? Familiar? Predictable? Do they fit into something I already understand? And it doesn't do this by analyzing facts. It does it by picking up on fragments, micro-expressions, the way your eyes move, how relaxed or tense your body is, the rhythm of your breathing, the tone underneath your voice, not just the words themselves. These signals don't register as information in the traditional sense. They register as feeling. That's why someone can say all the right things and still feel slightly off, or say very little at all and somehow feel immediately trustworthy. Because what people are responding to in a first impression isn't a full picture of who you are. It's a quick, incomplete guess based on whatever your nervous system is quietly communicating, and that communication didn't start today. It's been shaped over time. The way someone carries themselves in a first interaction often reflects patterns that formed long before they ever entered that room. Early environments, repeated social experiences, moments where being more open led to connection, or where it led to discomfort, rejection, or being misunderstood. Over time, the nervous system adapts. Some people learn to soften their presence to appear less threatening, more accommodating. Others develop a kind of emotional distance, not because they don't care, but because staying slightly guarded once made things easier to navigate. Some become highly expressive, almost automatically filling silence because silence once felt unsafe or exposing. None of this is random. It's the residue of what worked. And when someone meets you for the first time, they're not just meeting you in that moment. They're encountering all of those adaptations at once, condensed into a few seconds of perception. That's why first impressions can feel strangely accurate and completely wrong at the same time. Accurate in the sense that they're picking up on something real, your energy, your pacing, your emotional signals, but incomplete because they don't include the context that created those signals, and this is where people often misinterpret what's happening. A quiet person might be seen as distant. A composed person might be read as unapproachable. Someone who takes a moment to observe before speaking might be labeled as disengaged. But these aren't fixed traits. They're interpretations layered onto behaviors that often have a much deeper origin. And just as often, the reverse is true. Someone who appears immediately warm and expressive might be seen as open and confident, when in reality, that warmth is something they learn to perform quickly, before anyone has the chance to misunderstand them. None of these patterns are better or worse, they're just different ways the nervous system has learned to move through social space. There isn't a correct way to be perceived in those first few seconds, because perception itself isn't neutral. It's filtered through the other person's own experiences, expectations, and internal models of what feels familiar, which means two people can meet the same person and walk away with entirely different impressions, both feeling certain they're right. That's part of what makes first impressions so complex. They feel objective, but they're deeply subjective. And here's the part most people don't expect. The same traits that can create distance in a first impression are often the ones that create depth over time. Someone who doesn't immediately open up might be the one who forms the most stable, consistent connections once trust is established. Someone who feels hard to read at first might actually be highly attuned, simply taking the time to understand before reacting. There's a kind of slowness in these patterns that doesn't always translate well in quick interactions, but becomes valuable in longer ones. At the same time, people who make strong, positive first impressions often carry a different kind of pressure. The expectation to maintain that initial energy, to stay consistent with the version of themselves that others immediately connected to. So there's a quiet trade-off on both sides. Speed versus depth, clarity versus complexity, immediate connection versus gradual understanding, and none of these are inherently better. They just shape how someone is experienced in those first few moments. If you've ever felt like people don't fully get you right away, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It usually means you're not optimized for instant readability, and while that can create friction at the beginning, it often allows for something more nuanced to emerge later. Something that isn't based on quick assumptions but on actual understanding. At the same time, if you're someone who tends to form quick impressions of others, that doesn't make you shallow. It means your brain is doing what it's designed to do, making fast predictions in uncertain situations. But those predictions aren't final. They're just starting points, because what feels true in the first few seconds is rarely the full story. And maybe that's the quiet reality underneath all of this. First impressions aren't about capturing who someone is. They're about how quickly the mind tries to reduce complexity into something manageable. But people aren't simple. They unfold. And if any part of this feels familiar, if you've ever sensed that there's more to how you're perceived than what shows up on the surface, then there's more to explore there. Not to change it, just to understand it a little more clearly.